The liar paradox. This sentence is false. There is a sentence. It is simple, only 4 words. This sentence is false. You hear it. You read it. You try to believe it, but you can't. Because if it's true, then it must be false. And if it's false, then it must be true. It loops forever, caught in the quiet machinery of logic, grinding itself into dust. Imagine you are in a silent room. A candle flickers softly beside a book of paradoxes. You open it to the first page. It reads, "This sentence is false." You whisper the words aloud. You close your eyes. You begin to think. If the sentence is true, then what it says must hold. But what does it say? It says it is false. So, if it is true, it must be false. But then, if it's false, then what it says is not true, but it says it is false. So, if what it says is not true, then it must be true. And just like that, your mind is caught in a strange loop. One thought leads to the next, each one undoing the one before. Like stepping forward on a path that folds behind you. No matter how far you walk, you remain in place. Let's try to escape. Suppose a man stands in a town square. He raises a sign. On it is written, "Everything I say is a lie." He says, "I am lying." People gather around. They nod. They frown. They laugh. One person says, "He's lying, so he's telling the truth." Another says, "No, if he's telling the truth, then he's lying." And the conversation spirals, never landing. It's not a puzzle to solve. It's a mirror that reflects itself, and yourself, and your reflection, watching your reflection. This is the liar paradox. It has lived for thousands of years. It was first whispered by Epimenides, a Cretan philosopher. He said, "All Cretans are liars." But he was a Cretan. So, if he tells the truth, then he lies. And if he lies, then he tells the truth. Again, the spiral begins. But maybe this is not just a trick of language. Maybe it tells us something deeper about truth, about belief, about the limits of knowing. What is truth if it cannot be said without unraveling? What if truth is not a fixed star, but a flicker in the fog, something that hides the moment you try to hold it? Mathematicians met this paradox in formal logic. They tried to fix it. They made systems, axioms, rules, and yet the paradox remained. It whispered inside the systems. It broke foundations. In 1931, Gödel showed that even in arithmetic, there are statements that are true but unprovable. The ghost of the liar lives there too. You lay still. You think again of the sentence. This sentence is false. You wonder, what kind of sentence is that? Is it broken? Or is it pointing to something beyond logic? Maybe it's like a Zen koan, a finger pointing at the moon, not to be solved, but to be absorbed, to be felt, to be lived. There is something strangely comforting about the paradox. It never ends. It never resolves, like the sound of waves crashing endlessly against a shore. And in that rhythm, there is peace, a surrender. Not all things must be known. Some thoughts are meant to loop. Some ideas are meant to dissolve you. So tonight, let the paradox hold you. Let the sentence be false and true and false again. Let your thoughts circle without landing. Let the logic unwind like a lullaby of reason. Let yourself drift into the silence between truths, the place where meaning sleeps, where paradox is not a problem, but a companion, the Sorites Paradox. When does a heap stop being a heap? Imagine a single grain of sand. It rests on a table, silent. No one would call it a heap. It is small, insignificant, a single point in space. Now, place another grain beside it, and another, and another. At what point do these grains become a heap? 10 grains? 20? 100? 1,000? Where is the line? You don't know. No one does, because the line does not exist. This is the Sorites Paradox, also known as the paradox of the heap, a quiet dismantling of certainty. It begins with something ordinary, sand, or hair, or people, or moments in time, and it ends with nothing at all. No boundaries, no thresholds, just blur. If one grain is not a heap, and adding one grain doesn't create a heap, then 2 grains are not a heap. If 2 grains are not a heap, and one more doesn't make a heap, then 3 are not a heap, and so on. By this logic, no number of grains will ever make a heap. And yet, we know that's not true. We see heaps. We name them. But where exactly does the transformation happen? You can try the same idea elsewhere. A man has a full head of hair. You pluck one. Is he bald? Number. You pluck another. Still not bald. One hair doesn't make the difference. But repeat the step, and eventually, he's bald. Yet, no single step caused it. No single moment of change. And still, the change is real. What does this mean? That categories are fragile? That language cannot hold reality? That numbers are illusions? That logic has holes? Perhaps all of that, or none of it. The paradox lives in the in-between, between grain and heap, between hair and baldness, between day and night, between child and adult, between life and death. It whispers that the world is not made of edges, but gradients, shades, continuums. Maybe you feel this too, in the small moments of your life, the tiny changes, so quiet you didn't notice, the way you became who you are, not in a moment, but over years, breath by breath, like grains of sand. When did you change? When did you cross the line? Was there ever a line? Perhaps there is comfort in that nothing happens all at once. That change is not a cliff, but a slope, slow, software unseen, and yet unstoppable. The Sorites Paradox is not just about logic, it's about identity, about labels, about how we divide the world. How many lies make a liar? How many good acts make a saint? How many memories make a self? It invites you to dissolve your categories, to blur your definitions, to let go of sharp distinctions. You are not one thing. You are not one moment. You are a heap of moments, a pile of thoughts, a cascade of becoming. Now close your eyes. Picture a grain of sand falling slowly through the air, landing gently on a growing pile. It joins the others, quietly, indistinctly. One more, and one more, and one more. You cannot say when the pile became a heap, but it did, and maybe that's enough. Let this thought carry you. You're not a fixed point. You're a flowing pattern, a soft transition, a gradient of being. You do not need to know where it began or where it will end. You are the in-between. And in that space, there is peace. The unexpected hanging paradox. You will be hanged next week, but the day will be a surprise. A judge looks down at the prisoner, calm, precise. He speaks, "You will be hanged next week, on a weekday, but the day will be a surprise. You will not know until the morning of your death." The prisoner is led back to his cell, and he begins to think. He starts with Friday. If I haven't been hanged by Thursday night, then it must happen on Friday. But then I'll expect it. And that breaks the rule. It cannot happen on Friday. So Friday is ruled out. Then he looks at Thursday. If Friday is impossible, then if I'm still alive by Wednesday night, it must happen on Thursday. But then I'll know. So Thursday is impossible too. And so it goes. He eliminates Wednesday, then Tuesday, then Monday, until no day is left. He laughs. He thinks he's safe. Then, on Wednesday morning, the guards enter. They take him, and he is utterly surprised because it's Wednesday, a day he thought was impossible. And yet, there he is, walking toward his fate. This is the unexpected hanging paradox, a strange contradiction between logic and experience, between reason and reality. The prisoner proved it couldn't happen, but it did. He was surprised, exactly as promised. Where is the error? Was it in his logic, or in the assumption that logic always maps the world? He believed that surprise could be predicted, that he could outthink unpredictability. But perhaps you can't. This paradox sits at the crossroads of many ideas: epistemology, free will, self-reference, fate. It's not just about a hanging, it's about what it means to know. Can you know something that depends on your not knowing it? Can you predict a surprise? Can you plan for the impossible? It's like writing a note that says, "This will surprise you tomorrow." And somehow, it does. Let's shift the setting. Imagine your teacher tells you there will be a surprise quiz next week. You begin to think. The same logic creeps in. It can't be Friday, or Thursday, or Wednesday. Soon, you've ruled out the entire week. But then, Tuesday morning, she walks in, hands out the quiz, and everyone is shocked because they were so sure it couldn't happen. It's not just a joke. It's not just a trick. It reveals something about knowledge and how it eats itself. It's like a thought that bends inward, a snake swallowing its tail, a knowing that collapses once observed. There's something almost quantum about it. You try to pin it down, and it slips away. The moment you expect the unexpected, you make it expected. And so it moves. It hides. It surprises you by your own failure to outsmart surprise. Maybe this paradox says something about life. We plan, we predict, we try to find certainty. But life is not a logical system. It is filled with unexpected hangings and surprise quizzes and Wednesday mornings you thought were ruled out. So what now? What do you do with this? You rest in it. You let it wash over you. You let go of control. Not everything must be solved. Some things only want to be held, like a puzzle with no edges. The prisoner thought himself safe. His logic was flawless, and yet his expectations betrayed him. Perhaps the flaw was not in his thinking, but in believing thinking was enough. So lie still. Let the paradox settle into your chest. Let it breathe with you. Feel the weight of knowing and not knowing, the comfort of uncertainty, the beauty of surprise. Let your thoughts slow. Let logic untangle. You're not in a cell. You are not being led to the gallows. You are simply drifting into a space where contradiction can rest. Tomorrow may surprise you, or not, but tonight you sleep in the unknown, where paradox is not a threat, but a blanket. The Barber Paradox. The barber shaves all those who do not shave themselves. Who shaves the barber? There is a small town, quiet, simple, balanced, and in this town there is a barber. He is well known, respected, methodical. He has one rule. He shaves every man in town who does not shave himself. No exceptions. If you shave yourself, he leaves you alone. If you don't, he shaves you. Fair, clear, precise, until you ask, who shaves the barber? If he shaves himself, then he must not shave himself, because he only shaves those who don't shave themselves. But if he doesn't shave himself, then he must shave himself, because he shaves all those who don't shave themselves. Both options collapse. Both create contradiction, a closed loop, a fracture in logic. This is the Barber Paradox. Simple words, simple rules, impossible result. It seems like a trick, a game of language. But the damage goes deeper. It's not just about shaving. It's about systems, about definitions, about the limits of consistency. You've seen it before. A rule that refers to itself. A loop without escape. Like the sentence, this sentence is false. If it's true, then it must be false. If it's false, then it must be true. Or the statement, I always lie. If that's true, then it's false. And if it's false, then it might be true. Endless reversal. A mirror within a mirror. Logic folding in on itself. The Barber Paradox lives in this space. The space where rules break when they try to contain themselves. Where definition chokes on its own tail. Where systems eat their own logic. Now, think bigger. Not just about barbers, but about systems of logic themselves. If a system is powerful enough to describe its own rules, can it avoid contradiction? The answer is no. At least, not always. This is where the paradox touches something deeper. Gödel's incompleteness, theorems. He showed, mathematically, irrefutably, that in any system complex enough to describe arithmetic, there are truths that cannot be proven within it. And There are falsehoods that cannot be disproven. The barber is the shadow of this idea, a hint that even the cleanest systems contain holes. The barber is not just a man, he is a symbol of limitation, of recursion, of paradox baked into the structure of thought. He is the place where clarity becomes confusion, where answers dissolve, where categories implode, and yet you're still thinking about him, still imagining this man, standing in a small white room, holding a razor, asking a question with no answer. He is trapped, but so are you. What if you're the barber? What if your mind is the system? You apply rules, you define boundaries, you try to keep things neat, but then you look inward and the rules begin to shake. You try to label yourself, to measure yourself, to judge your own thoughts using your own thoughts, and suddenly there's no ground beneath you. Can a mind fully grasp itself? Can a mirror reflect its own shape? Or must it break? The barber doesn't need to exist. That's what some say. Maybe no such person could be real. Maybe the whole thing is a trick of logic. But even if the barber doesn't exist, the problem does. And maybe so do you. The paradox becomes a lesson about humility, about boundaries, about letting go. You cannot solve every loop. You cannot untangle every knot. Sometimes you must stop pulling. So rest here in the space between self and system, between reason and recursion. Let the barber put down his blade. Let him sit quietly in the impossible, and you too can let go of needing the answer. The barber may never be shaved, but you can be still. The two envelopes paradox. You're holding two envelopes. One has twice as much money as the other. Should you switch? You are seated at a table. Before you, two identical envelopes, sealed, silent, heavy with potential. You are told one contains twice as much money as the other. Nothing more. You pick one, you hold it, but haven't opened it yet. Now you're given a choice. Do you keep it or switch? You begin to think. Suppose your envelope contains X, then the other envelope might contain 1/2 X or 2X. Both are equally likely. So you calculate the expected value, 1/2 chance times 1/2 X plus 1/2 chance times 2X. X एक चौथाई X plus X or 1.25X, more than what you hold. So you should switch. It seems obvious. But now you hold the second envelope, and the same logic applies. Should you switch back? The same numbers, the same probabilities. Again, switching seems better. You are trapped, endlessly switching back and forth. This is the two envelopes paradox. Simple setup, irrational conclusion. It feels like magic, like math gone wrong, or reason chasing its own shadow. How can each envelope be worth more than the other? How can switching always seem like the better move? You try again. You slow your mind. Let's assume one envelope contains $10. Then the other must contain either $5 or $20. But you don't know which one you have. So you guess, and you get stuck again. Every time you estimate, the numbers betray you. There's something off here, something slippery, like trying to hold mist. The paradox hides in assumption, in how you treat the unknown. You treat your envelope as if it's a fixed value, but it isn't. You haven't opened it. You have no anchor. And yet, you assign values. You assign probabilities. You build equations on air. The truth is this: once you pick an envelope, there's no rational reason to switch. The logic that says the other is worth more applies in reverse as well. Your expectations collapse into themselves, a mirror reflecting a mirror, a trick of infinite logic. It's like standing at a fork in the road, and both paths claim they're shorter, but walking either one just loops you back. The paradox whispers something deeper about choice, about uncertainty, about the illusion of gain. We want to optimize, to choose perfectly, to win. But sometimes reason becomes a trap. Sometimes the numbers lie, not because they're false, but because our assumptions twist them. This is not about envelopes, or money, or switching. It's about expectations. It's about the way we reason under ignorance, and how easily we can be seduced by the illusion of better. Think about your own life. How often do you hold one choice, but imagine the other might be worth more? You switch jobs, you switch cities, you switch dreams, and each time you carry the belief the other option is richer. But perhaps both envelopes hold the same thing, not in number, but in weight, in cost, in value unmeasurable. And maybe the point is not to switch, not to calculate, but to accept, to hold the envelope you chose, to feel its presence, and let go of the need to compare. Let this paradox calm you. Let it show you how expectation can tangle, how logic can loop, and how stillness might be the only rational move. Breathe. You're not at a table. You are not holding paper. You are floating in the space between options, and both are equal now. Let your mind stop switching. Let it rest. No choice is better. No path is richer. No envelope is worth more. You've already chosen, and that is enough. The Raven Paradox. All ravens are black. So, is a green apple proof? You are told a simple statement. All ravens are black. Seems clear. You picture a raven, its dark wings, its shimmering feathers. No confusion. Now, how do you confirm this? How do you gather evidence? You look for ravens. One by one, you see a raven. It's black. Another, also black. Another, still black. Every black raven feels like confirmation. Every sighting reassures you. Yes, the rule is holding. But then something strange happens. A philosopher hands you a green apple. He smiles. He says, "This is evidence too." You blink. A green apple? How can that prove anything about ravens? This is the Raven Paradox, also called Hempel's Paradox. It asks, what counts as evidence, and how does logic twist when we're not looking? Let's slow down. All ravens are black. is logically equivalent to all non-black things are not ravens. Same truth, different form. So dash. If you find something that's not black and it's not a raven, you have confirmed the statement. That green apple is not black. It is also not a raven. Therefore, it fits the rule. It supports the claim. And yet, something feels wrong. A green apple should not teach you about birds. But logic disagrees. Logic is cold, strict, unfeeling. And logic says, if a rule is universally true, then every object that obeys it strengthens it, even if that object is irrelevant, strange, absurd. It's uncomfortable. It exposes a gap between how we think and how logic operates. It shows us that confirmation is not always intuitive, that evidence can wear a mask. Imagine you're in a room. You have a box with millions of objects, ravens, books, chairs, apples, and you want to test a rule. All ravens are black. You open the box. You pull something out. It's not black, but it's also not a raven. Technically, this supports your theory, but emotionally, it feels meaningless. This paradox forces a question. What counts as good evidence? And is all confirmation equal? There's another layer. Suppose you collect 1,000 non-black non-ravens, each one confirming the rule. You start to feel confident, but you haven't looked at a single raven. You've confirmed the rule without touching its core. Is that knowledge or illusion? The raven paradox is about more than just birds. It's about how we form beliefs, about how we test our theories, and how the things that feel like proof sometimes aren't. It reveals the gap between logic and understanding, between technical truth and human intuition. And maybe that's the point. Maybe the paradox isn't a mistake. Maybe it's a mirror that shows our hunger for pattern, our craving for simplicity, and the silent flaws in how we search for certainty. So here is the lesson. Not all evidence feels the same. Not all support is useful. Sometimes a green apple tells you nothing, even if it technically tells you everything. Rest in that discomfort. Let it settle. The world is not built only on logic, but also on meaning and feeling. And sometimes they don't agree. So close the box. Let the ravens fly. Let the apples rest. You don't need more proof tonight, just silence and the soft weight of paradox.